That was earthy. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. As the title would suggest, this is an introduction to fingerstyle blues guitar. It's going to be a little different than some of the lessons you might find here on the internet, because I kind of use it as a catch-all for the various different types of blues that you can play on the acoustic guitar. This lesson is sort of an introduction. It's what it sounds like. It's an introduction to that. So this is not so much like a riffs and lick kind of lesson. This is more of some concepts and really a technique that will help you kind of specifically more in the Delta style blues area. So that's going to be straight blues. There's going to be, you know, some ragtime involved in that as you get more advanced in that. But this is kind of a lesson that I wish I had when I first started getting into this style of play. I must have been about 17 years old when I first heard Mississippi John Hurt, of course. Another huge influence on me is Dave Van Ronk, folk singer from the 1960s, did a lot of this stuff. And so it really shaped how I think about acoustic guitar and really guitar music as a whole, even when I'm doing a lot more of electric stuff, which you see here on Musical Hangout here on this channel, as well as if you find me on Spotify, Amazon, and things like that. So that's your introduction. We're going to focus on really two things, just a basic technique, and really that's about it. It's just that basic technique, and then how to kind of start practicing some of this stuff. So before we switch to the close-up, one thing I did want to talk about is how you hold the guitar when you're doing a Delta style blues kind of a thing, because it feels wrong to do this lesson and not mention it. There's a couple different approaches. You can kind of hold it like you probably were shown at one point or another, sort of flat against your body, and that's fine. That can be kind of restrictive when you're getting into some of the ragtime stuff, which does involve more advanced chord grips that can be kind of difficult to do on the acoustic guitar. So that's the first approach. The second approach to holding the instrument would be kind of like Mississippi John Hurt would do, which is where instead of leaning it flat against your body, you would kind of arch that back a little bit, so that the front of the guitar is kind of like hanging out. You probably can't see too well here. But that gives you a bit more range of motion. It's easier to kind of see what you're doing when you need to look at your hands. It may not be the most comfortable way. I always find it a bit uncomfortable. But I'm somewhere in between flat on my body and leaning it out. That also gives you, depending on the neck profile of your guitar, that can give you a bit more range of your fretting hand here. So when you do need to do some of those wide grips, it's easier to grab. Now, if you're using a guitar with a flatter neck, that might not be advantageous to you, but that's for you to decide. I'm just here to show you your options. And then there is kind of the Dave Van Ronk approach, which I've never, despite being dressed like him right now, I've never really understood why he did it the way he did, but he's Dave Van Ronk, and he was a legend and I am not. But he would kind of hook his picking hand over it. And the only thing I can think, the benefit of that I can see, is you get a little bit more, more dynamics out of your picking hand. Of course, that would be how to hold the guitar, and then some things to think about when you're actually doing the picking is there's a couple of different ways that the guys in the Delta did it. First way is kind of the most obvious way, which is just your fingers, you know. And if you are new to fingerstyle guitar or don't have a lot of experience in it, that is going to be painful. I'm just going to tell you like it is, you know, reality check. It's a lot like Mississippi John Hurt did it. Like, it's going to take time for your fingers to blister up and form those calluses. So that's option number one. It also, that kind of style does give you a bit more of an earthier, bassier kind of a sound. So that is something to keep in mind as well. When you are really rocking this bass, it's gonna bring out a lot more low end. The second option is kind of where I'm at, which is with fingernails. You don't want to have them super long. Right now, mine are kind of just long enough that they kind of, when I rub them against my thumb like that, I can feel the nail. I have the type of hands where really I should be playing with my fingers, but I like the sound of the nail just a bit more. So I keep them at that length just because it kind of is the closest I can get without switching to the third method, which we'll talk about here in a second. It's a good mixture of the two. You get enough finger in there that it brings out some of the low end, but if I need to, I can pick, with my fingernail and get some of that high end. If you have, kind of fatter fingers like I do, your nails probably grow that way, and so what happens is they can get kind of stuck on the strings and kind of shred your fingernails, and it doesn't feel good, and it's gross, and girls don't like it. And then that third and final option would be with actual finger picks that you can go and buy, and that gets kind of difficult because there's various different sizes and gauges and things like that, and I don't really want to cover that in here, but it is an option, and that would be the brightest sound you can possibly get. But so I've experimented with all of those, and I've found that like I said, mine is a bit different. It's sort of a hybrid between the finger and the nail. But if I had to err, I would say I would err more inside of finger. It just feels better to me. It sounds better to me. Again, Mississippi John Hurt is a big hero of mine. So I wanted to get that out of the way before we zoom in, so that you're aware of, what's happening before we even start getting into the technique proper. So we'll zoom in and I'll give you kind of just a basic overview of fingerstyle blues, specifically in that Delta style, okay? Okie dokie, the classic YouTube guitar lesson close-up. Here we go. So, like I said at the top there, not really going to be too focused on any type of licks or anything like that. This is more of a technique thing, specifically understanding the role of your right hand in acoustic blues stylings. And so again, like I was talking about at the top, this is more focused on Delta blues, but these concepts will map over to other styles of acoustic blues as well. So the first thing you have to understand is the role of your right hand. So right hand, a lot of this stuff is these rhythms and things like that. A lot of people don't talk about it, but in years gone by, it was based off of, the sound of somebody's feet walking down the street, or sound of a train going down a track, or a horse walking, or something like that. And so there's, in a general sense, specifically down in the Delta, there was that sort of like oompa kind of a sound. And then another way you can also look at it is some of you out there probably have experience playing keys or piano or something like that. You can think of it as, what the left hand is doing, which is usually a lot of rhythm, keeping time. And so the very basic pattern for right hand picking of Delta blues style is that kind of keeping time, usually in quarter notes. So that beginning there was sort of like a ragtime, a blues rag type of thing in the key of C, just because it's an easy, key for this type of music. And a lot of melodies and things like that kind of fall. You don't have to mutate your hands too much. So check out what's happening there. Usually it's just quarter notes, or just eighth notes. And a lot of that subdivision and things like that are going to be in your melody line, but this is just the rhythm line. So let's unpack that here just a little bit more closely. So what's actually happening there is I'm alternating. It's called alternating bass. I'm alternating between the root, the C note here up at the 3rd fret, and the 3rd of the chord E there at the 2nd fret on the D string. And now this is where those different stylings I was talking about at the top come into play. If you're playing more with your nail, that's when you're going to want to really dig into that. But like I said, I like to play Mississippi John Hurt style with my thumb, just alternating there. Take it real slow. And what you want to do is you do want to, if you're using skin like I am, and also with your nail, or the finger picks, well, with the exception of the finger picks you're going to want to maybe pick a little lighter. There is, some, girth to it. There's some, I'm not, smacking it, but I am hitting it hard, and kind of letting gravity do its thing. And notice how shoulder, arm here and elbow and up to there is relatively static. You don't want to be too loose. All in the wrist. And a good habit to kind of get in, because this kind of slowed me down when I started doing ragtime, is to also maybe, let gravity do its thing. It's part of the fun of this style of play, I think, is to kind of just, let your hand kind of bounce, like you're bouncing a ball. And what that'll do is on your second note, it's going to give it a little bit more torque behind it, I guess. And that's, really just that basic right hand pattern. It's just getting used to that. If you can practice that by itself, because that stays. Obviously, you're not always, alternating depending on where the melody goes and what tune you're playing. Sometimes it will drop to just, Travis picking, but getting this down under your finger with just, that will, and just going 1, 4, and 5 because it is blues, just getting a feel for where those are at is gonna it will make it. It sounds boring to practice, but I promise you, like the dividends that this will earn, I can't even describe it to you. It will make more complex pieces 1,000 times easier to navigate if you can just get that under your hand. And sometimes those of you who are observant noticed that the notes I was alternating there switched. When I went to the 5 chord here to G, that's also pretty common. So typically it's like root and third or root and fifth. And, combination of that, sometimes it's fifth root, so on and so forth, and what have you. Just find your chords. You could also do it in C. It's hard to do it without a melody. You could just kind of walk that way. Some people like to do like that common inversion shape. If you wanted to go from C to G, that's an option. Again, it's going to depend largely on the tune you're playing. This is more to guide you along and get you, used to playing this kind of stuff before you even try to tackle a piece, or before you even start trying to create in this, if we're being honest, So once you get those down, it's just a matter of knowing your fretboard as far as, finding melodies. Another thing I did want to touch on, because it does show up a lot, especially if you're playing Mississippi John Hurt, is this is kind of more that train kind of a sound. Right? Root, fifth, third, fifth, root. Getting, the variations of that under your hand, that can be tricky as well. So, if you're focusing on anything, if you take anything out of that, just focusing on that thumb motion. How does it feel? Do I want to put more energy in there? Do I want to, take less out? Things like getting used to that thumb, keeping time is most important. And then when it comes to bringing in the other digits, as a general rule of thumb, it's either thumb and index finger. I would think, which is kind of actually how I started. You would see Reverend Gary Davis do that a lot, although he had a kind of an interesting technique where he had a larger size finger pick on his thumb. That gave him just the ability to add a little bit more oomph to his bass lines. But anyway, slight digression. Mance Lipscomb from Texas Bluesmen, would also do the finger, I like to call it the finger gun, James Bond, you know. That's perfectly acceptable. That also gives you the opportunity to kind of like plant your hands on there, so you, again, kind of like Dave Van Ronk, you get a little bit more dynamic control. I tend to find myself leading with my, I'm flipping you off, leading with my middle finger, like Mississippi John Hurt. I don't know if I'll get copyrighted for playing Mississippi John Hurt there. I won't say the name of the tune. But I like to lead with that. I think it's just because, honestly, when it comes to your picking hand, it's a stronger phalange. I mean, people like to, you know, like Hendrix, you know, there's that whole debate whether you want to, you know, do hammer-ons with your middle finger or your ring finger or something like that. But I like to lead when I'm doing my melody lines, first with my middle finger, then kind of with my index finger. It sounds complex when I say it out loud, but I don't think it looks to, as I'm looking here at the camera. Yeah, I mean, bringing it in on other notes. You know, so that would be something to look at, is just once you've got this down, start bringing in just a basic melody. I mean, what's great about like the key of C and the key of G, they're great guitar keys, especially on acoustic guitar, because those open scale positions are just like right at your fingertips, right? The G pentatonic, it's right there. So you have nothing but options there. So I'm going to switch keys here on you to the key of G and just find a simple little melody. I wouldn't worry too much about 12-bar structure and things like that when you're, you know, trying to get comfortable with this. My whole point of this lesson is to just get you comfortable with these things, and then you can start, you know, exploring, you know, harmonic frequency and things like that. 4-chord. Would be a D. That was a little sloppy there, but again, that's kind of part of the fun, is exploring all these different, you know, scale, you know, chord relationship. Music, here's the big enchilada for you, who, if you've stuck around this long, a lot of music and songwriting and things like that is about, you know, especially when it comes to guitar and like doing things like this, it's about the chord scale relationship. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a nice introduction to fingerstyle blues guitar, specifically in that sort of Delta blues style format. There are various different styles that we can cover. I didn't want to do too long of a video on this. It's just a style of playing that is very near and dear to my heart. I think I said in a previous video that I kind of cut my teeth playing this music as a solo act, so it's something that I have a very intimate knowledge of. But if you did like this video, let me know down in the comments below. Maybe give it a thumbs up. Maybe you want to see a follow-up to this video that goes a bit more in depth into some of the different picking patterns and melodic concepts and things like that. In any case, again, thank you so much for watching. It really does mean the most. I would hope that in addition to liking this video, you would consider subscribing here to the YouTube channel for more educational material. There's going to be a lot more of that here in the not too distant future. I, of course, do those historical deep dives, which are a load of fun. And each and every Tuesday night, I am here live doing music every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Pacific time for Musical Hangout. It is my live music broadcast. Occasionally, about once a quarter or so, I do an acoustic set, so you can kind of see me put what I just taught into practice. I always like to, you know, practice what I preach here. I'm not one of those guitar teachers that just shoots a video, farts it out there, and then, you know, don't ever, you know, attempt to do these things myself. Anyways, I think that's all I want to say. Oh, please follow the links down below in the description box to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, all that nonsense. But the most important link is the link that will take you to my music, my own original music. There is a few albums out there of mine where I do incorporate this technique, but more original than copying what other people have done. In any case, I am Zach Hval, singer, songwriter, guitar player extraordinaire, signing off, reminding you that every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. Bread is bread, cheese is cheese, praise God, I don't have a pick.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah.